300 different kinds of snakes. Most are absolutely harmless, like this beautiful vine snake. But there are some very deadly snakes in India, and they kill thousands of people. These bites are accidents, and they can be avoided.
There are 15 species of Indian snakes that have killed humans. But just 4 of them account for the majority of snakebite deaths in India. Knowing the habits of these snakes and taking steps to avoid accidental encounters with them can save many, many lives.
The things that are most dangerous in this world are all things that come from us. That's the bottom line. It's more dangerous to jump on your scooter than it is to go into the forest. It's more dangerous to be inside of a city than it is to be inside of a forest. And this is something that's really important rationally to remember. It's easy to be misled by statistics, and you're going to hear some very, very crazy statistics today. And in many cases, like worrying for us because we're in the epicenter of it. But if you look at it statistically, it is far more dangerous to get killed on a scooter or whatever else. Now, snakes have a curious position in history because they have been both demonized and idolized. And here in India, we find ourselves on the fault line. We have both sides. We have Catholicism, which basically says that the snake is an incarnation of the devil near enough. And then we have Hinduism, which more or less creates a deity out of at least cobras. So we find ourselves at this very strong fault line, which makes it very interesting because there is a strong incentive among certain communities to protect them, and at the same time, there is a strong incentive among other communities to reject them, to push them out. What this doesn't do is it doesn't allow for a dialogue of rationality and common sense. So hopefully today we're going to be able to break through that a little bit and just come with some of the basic facts. So for example, in Goa there are 80-90 species of snakes in total. Depending on where you are, that amount will go up and down. Of that amount of snakes, perhaps 8-10% of them are venomous at most. So if you see a snake, the vast majority of the time, it's not going to be venomous. And that's already a thing that's really important to understand. If you see a snake, chances are it's not going to be dangerous. The second thing is, if you see a snake, it is no longer dangerous because no snake will ever attack you, unless you attack it first. It is an absolute. So I have been in many situations, whether it be in a rescue situation in the forest where I've come up to snakes, and I've never once been in a situation where I've been attacked. And this is the same across the board. So snakes are not aggressive animals. They will defend themselves. If we step on them, if we attack them, if we try and kill them, then they will defend themselves. But they are really not bad creatures. Here in Goa, we do have all 4 of the most dangerous snakes in India. Now, the percentage of dangerous snakes, as I said, is low. But if you go into a city where you have significant development, where you've had the forest being cut, where you have a lot of trash, where you have a lot of concrete and not enough of the forest, you will see a far higher percentage of the dangerous snakes. So the 4 most dangerous snakes in Goa, which we're going to see in a minute, are the crate, the cobra, the Russell's viper, and the saw-scale viper. All 4 of these snakes are found in a higher density in a city and a human area than they are in a rural or a forest area. The simple reason for that is balance. Inside a forest you have biodiversity. So you have lots and lots of different things, but you don't have much of any one thing. Wherever we go, and there's much of humans, there's then much of rats, and as a result of rats, the things that eat rats. What eats rats? Well, cobras, crates, and Russell's vipers do a really good job of eating rats, and they're generalists, which means they're pretty good at living with us. They don't mind adapting to us. In contrast, a king cobra, it will never live in a city. It's a very shy, gentle snake. Yes, it's 15 foot and it's one of the most dangerous snakes in the world, but it doesn't bite people. It's not a snake that you see being in conflict with villagers. Only people that are snake rescuers, snake charmers, and very, very rare accidents. But despite it being the biggest venomous snake in the world, it doesn't feature in the Big Four of India. It's not part of the equation. This snake is moving out. It's moving into the hinterlands of Goa. And these snakes only eat other snakes. So they will eat a Russell's viper for breakfast quite happily, and then by dinner it will go on to a cobra. Like it's creating balance, because it's literally eating all of the other snakes around. As soon as we modify the environment and the landscape, we end up with a situation where these kind of snakes move out, and many others, flying snakes, hump-nosed pit vipers, etc., and we end up with a very, very thin palette of biodiversity, which tends to include the most dangerous ones. Now, there's many reasons to protect forests. It's not the night for it. I could be talking for hours about why we have to protect the forests of Goa, because they are frankly one of the most remarkable places I've ever been in the world. But I do want to get this across in relation to the snakes specifically. The more we modify our environment, and the more we create spaces that don't have any kind of thought for animals, for wildlife, for our forests, the more we end up compromising ourselves. Now, it's a very, very simple equation. I know it's hard a lot of the time for people to understand the correlation between a healthy forest and a healthy us. But it is as direct as that. If we look after our planet, then we ourselves will be healthy. There will be less diseases. There will be less venomous snakes in a density basis. There will be more clean air. There will be more clean water. So all of these things kind of tie in. And I think that's a really important thing for people to understand. Because very often the reverse happens. We want to get rid of the forest because we're scared of it. And then in doing so, we actually increase the risk that we put ourselves in to snakes, which is one of these wonderful ironies of humans.
So when a snake actually bites a person, there are many times that it will result in what's called a dry bite. So a dry bite is a bite when a totally venomous snake can actually bite a human being but is not interested in injecting any venom into you. So you can step on a cobra, it can be a wild cobra, completely full of venom in its sac, in its gland, but yet when it bites you there will be no effect because it's a completely dry bite. Now the reason for this is simply because the snake does not want to waste this very valuable resource that it has, which is very expensive to generate, to make, and uses up a lot of energy. So he's developing this venom by doing whatever he needs to do, not wasting his energy, but using up all that energy. So he can eventually eat a rat, for example, in the case of a cobra. Now there's a person who comes and fools around with the snake, and if he injects all that venom into a human being, he's now lacking it. He's not going to eat the human being, so it's a waste. And he's not benefiting from killing you in any way. The bite is purely out of defense, and the snake knows this. The muscle can calculate the amount that needs to be injected at a bite. So in many cases, the bite is either a very small dose of venom or it's a dry bite, because that's the purpose of venom in the snake. However, the venom in some species are so toxic that even that small amount can do harm. There are also cases when people really trouble a snake and upset it so much that out of pure, defense, it's a defensive reaction of course, but it will just give you a very bad bite. And that will result in, in a tragic circumstance if you don't go to the hospital. Another reason why a lot of people die in India from snake bite is the reliance on quack medicine and herbal remedy and your jadi boti and your zadopalo and all these type of things which have no proven benefit to curing a person from snake bite. So the only thing that can actually cure you from a bite is anti-venom, which doctor will get into later on in detail. But so now I was talking about the whole ethics of a rescue. The whole ethic, even from the point of view of the caller. Many people, will call you to catch a snake, will call us to catch a snake. We've been doing it for so many years. So, we've kind of seen this over the years. That the nature of the call sometimes is uncalled for in the first place. You see a snake in your garden, on the tree, it happens to be a tree snake, you call a rescuer. There's no need for that. The rescuer comes to catch the snake, then the person will say, please take it and release it far away from my house, with the sole intention of you now and your property being completely devoid of the presence of a snake. And in your mind, the whole conclusion that you've come to, that now you are safe. This is not true, because the snake will utilize a particular kind of an ecological niche. And in that area, that's where the snake will live. If you remove the snake from that place, another one will move in to fill that gap. So you're never going to be completely devoid of snakes in your place, wherever you live. There is no reason to call somebody when the snake does not need to be caught. If you understand the snake species you're sharing your space with, you will understand that some are cannibalistic, like the cobra. The Russell viper is a snake that causes maybe half of the deaths in India itself just by bites. And the cobra is very well known to eat Russell vipers. So if you have a cobra in your compound and you tell someone to take it away from there, you're in effect actually creating more of a problem for yourself and more of a hazard, because now there's a possibility of attracting a Russell viper. Cobras don't do a majority of the biting, it's the Russell viper that does. Now how does this happen? A cobra is a snake that follows, it pursues its prey. So if it's searching for a rat, it will follow the rat, it will catch the rat, it will inject the rat, and it will sit and wait till the rat collapses somewhere by following a scent trail. Once it comes upon the rodent, it will consume it. In the case of a Russell viper, it's different in the sense that it is an ambush hunter, which is why it's very well camouflaged. So you have leaf litter around, you have the Russell viper lying in wait, very unlike a cobra that would follow its prey. You pass by that area, there's a chance it might strike. You pass by that area not realizing that the Russell viper is there. Because it's so well camouflaged, so you have a tendency to step on it. And these are the reasons why you can end up getting a bite. These are the reasons why you should not remove snakes from one place and put it somewhere else, because the whole concept is wrong. Besides this, it's not even ethically correct from the point of view that from studies now we know that snakes and certain species like the king cobras have got very well-defined and well understood memory, spatial memory of the area where they live. There have been a lot of studies when transmitters have been put into snakes, individuals, and they have been released over a period of a couple of years. The snake's movements have been tracked, and now we know what exactly the snakes do in that period of time, because every day there is somebody following the movement. We know that females move much less than males in certain species. We know that the king cobra, like perhaps other snakes, remembers certain spaces, certain areas which it can use over a period of time, in course of time, later on, as hides. Hides in the sense when a snake is feeling threatened, when there are periods of time in the snake's life when they are threatened, like the times of when they're shedding or molting their skin. During this time, the snake's eyes get completely milky, because there's a liquid that is being secreted between the old skin and the new skin. So the new one, the old one can come out easily. It's a kind of a lubricant. So during that time, that same liquid will make the eye very murky and very milky, so much so that it's an irritant to the snake. He knows that he is now, vulnerable. He knows that if something attacks it, he's not in the position to protect himself as well as he would if he wasn't in this situation. So then he needs to hide somewhere. So a king cobra, for example, during this point of time, will know that a certain hide is there and it exists in a certain spot. So he goes straight away to that place and he waits out this whole duration till he sheds his skin and comes out. If you take a snake and dump it in a new place, then the snake has to relearn all these new things in the new area. Secondly, what's going to happen is there will be a conflict, forget about you and the snake, there will be a possible conflict between that snake and another individual from that area. So that's another thing that should not be done. Rescuers also should never do these kind of things. And then there are other things like a concept that people have in their minds. It started with the rescue community, which I don't really agree with. And that is the concept of Sarpamitra, or what translates into a snake friend, or the friend of the snake, or the snake being your friend, or whatever. This is absolutely not possible. A snake is not like a dog. You cannot build that kind of a bond with a wild snake, definitely. And this has its complications, because when you have a friend, then you want to be loving to your friend. So then there are all these things about catching a snake, coupled with the whole presence of social media. So one guy will try and catch a snake and hold it, free handle it. The next person will want to get more likes than him, so he will try and kiss the hood of the cobra. And these are the guys who are now contributing to bites in the country. In the past few years, I think Maharashtra is probably the state with the most amount of snake bites because of this reason, particularly. And it's not surprising that this term has come from that state. So you can't be a snake friend. The snake cannot be your friend. It just doesn't work like that. So here is one example I will just show you of a rescue gone really wrong, because the rescue has done everything that he's not supposed to do. I'm going to pause it because what's happened is already happened. He got a bite from the snake. I think if I'm not mistaken, he ended up dying. This guy. Yeah, so if I'm not mistaken, this guy ended up dying. But as you can see, he's already caught the Russell's viper, and now he doesn't know how to deal with it henceforth. So he's tried to shove it into a bottle. A Russell viper in itself is a snake which is like a spring. So what he's actually done is he's triggered that whole reflex action to strike back up. And before he's managed to put him in, he's already got a bite. Okay, this is completely wrong. The use of bottles as far as rescue is concerned is absolutely wrong for this very specific reason. Because as you're trying to push the snake into the bottle, all the snake wants to do is come out. Catching it, pressing it, subduing it in those ways, using tongs and grab sticks and all these kind of things is not correct. It only upsets the snake even more. There is a very simple technique where a bag and a pipe is used. So the pipe, which is a PVC pipe or any pipe of a substantial length, is put into a bag and is kept in the corner of the room. And then with a long stick, the snake is just guided towards that. So then what happens is the snake wants to escape the situation. And he gets into the pipe thinking it's a hole when in actual fact is entering the bag. So once that happens, all you need to do is just secure the mouth of the bag and the snake is trapped. Then you can go and release it in another spot. If you have to do that in the first place.
If you find around, if you kill a python, it's like killing a tiger, legally, according to the law. You kill a tiger and kill a python, it's the same schedule. So any other snake, if you kill, it's illegal. But if you tell a person it's illegal to kill a snake, so you should not kill it, they'll get wild with you. Yeah, so it doesn't solve your problem. Your problem is you need to let people learn to trust you and share awareness over a period of time. It's heartbreaking. Like for me, being a rescue for over 20 years, once I went for a rescue call, I was alone. So there's this cobra under a pile of stones. I'm squatting down, and it's a massive cobra, and there are a lot of people behind me, but they're at a safe distance. So I'm tackling the situation. I bend down, I'm squatting, I lift the stone. The cobra moves towards me. So now, because I know the cobra's behavior, I do not move. I stay still, I'm squatting. The cobra moves under my legs, between my legs, and it goes behind. And I'm very sure, as it moves behind, I'll stand up and turn around and catch it. As soon as it moves behind, somebody with a stick hits it and kills it. Now, I'm in the scene, I have the snake in my control, still somebody kills it because he was a part of this mob that was building up behind me, which I was not aware of. Yeah, I lost my cool, I got wild. It really did not help the situation because the next time a snake came, they didn't call me. They killed it. So it did not help the situation. So if I had to be more cautious about the entire situation, like I do now, the first thing I go there, I locate where the snake is, I push everyone out of that place, out of the room. If somebody has a stick in their hand, I will make sure the stick is kept on the ground. Nobody has a stick in their hand, even in the background. Yeah? So that's what I do from a rescue point of view. The only thing you can do is try to share awareness, try to tell people, add empathy to the situation. That a snake is just doing its job, it's harmless, it's here for rats or whatever. Put empathy into the people. At the same time, if somebody gets violent or aggressive with you, you can always say, see, I've also informed the forest department, they are on their way, wait for them. Okay, it's not right to kill a snake, they can, file a case against you. But whenever you take the law, you mention the law, people get more violent, I know, and aggressive. So have patience. You're doing a good job, just have patience, go with the awareness kind of flow.
That these snakes are going to adapt to this urban ecology, which has already happened in cities like Mumbai, and they're going to live there, and there's going to be conflict in the city. It need not be in an environment like this. Alex rightly pointed out at the beginning of this session, he said when you have a lot of biodiversity, there's going to be less concentration of things that can harm you. When you have lesser biodiversity and a very niche habitat, you're probably going to have invasive species like this. I mean, they're not invasive, but for an urban ecology, they would be invasive, right? Because they're now adapting to an urban ecology. So as your ecology develops, you have to be cognizant of the fact that you are probably propagating the ecology of something that you don't want living there as much as it should. It should be living in its natural environment. So it has to have a protected space as well. Now the important aspect is, about this particular case is, this was my patient. He was the first patient that I lost to snakebite. He was 27 years old. His friends told him that you catch that snake. Show us how strong you are. And he went and he caught this Russell's viper. He wasn't a trained rescuer. He thought it was a python. He obviously got bitten. He went to one hospital and they told him that you got to go to a bigger hospital because we're going to just give you first aid and we're going to shift you because this is a dangerous bite. And he didn't believe them. He took out the IV line. He's like, I'm young, I'm strong, I'm going to be fine. And then he went to another hospital after a while because he was worried. That hospital told him, you are in grave danger, but we don't have anti-snake venom. You got to go to another hospital. So by the time he went to the third hospital, there's that much of time delay. His disbelief about the situation. And then at this third hospital, they gave him anti-snake venom, they gave him blood products, but the delay was already done its damage. And by the fifth day, he was transferred to our center because he was too sick, he was in recovery. And I watched him die. So the circumstance was very grave, the delay was very grave. So the important thing here is that, like all the videos you saw, even this video, there was somebody standing behind that camera. That person was the first responder. That person shouldn't have been holding a phone watching all of this happen. Just as in the case of that baby, just as in the case of that man who was playing with the snake, that person could have been the first responder. That could have been any one of you. For any emergency. Yes, taking a video, taking a picture is very important to capture the evidence, to understand the situation, to tell people like us what exactly happened and when it happened, so we know, okay, this is how much of time has elapsed, these are the circumstances, so this is probably what's going to happen. Yes, for that, yes. But to take this whole video and post it on social media, no. That person behind the camera is the first responder. And we are here today to share with you how you can be a better first responder if you already are one, and if you aren't one, then you can become one.
It's easy for you all to see. It's, I hope I'm audible. Yeah, so I'm going to do it from this side so that it's easy for you all to see, but it's usually easier to roll the patient towards yourself. So what I'm going to do is to put him in a position in such a way that his airway remains open, and if he vomits, it does not go back inside. Because an unconscious patient cannot swallow. They will breathe it in, they will aspirate it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put him on the side, just as is illustrated over there. So
okay, do you need some help? You need some volunteers?
I need one more person to help me out with this.
Come. A first responder.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, just before she starts, I just want to tell you this. This will not be done for a patient who has a cervical spine injury, like a fracture. It will not be done for someone who's not breathing. It will be done for someone who is unconscious, for someone who doesn't have a cervical spine injury and who is still breathing on his own, able to breathe on his own with some adequate effort. And the primary purpose is A, to keep A clear from vomit and the tongue from blocking the airway. This is the primary purpose of this particular position, which is known as the recovery position.
So, yeah. In this case, what we have is an unconscious patient. If I wake him up, he's not responding. But as you can see, his chest is rising, so he's breathing. And he's not been in an accident, right? So we're going to just flip him over to that side. Ma'am, if you could please help me. You can take the shoulders and just roll him over to that side. Yeah. And his leg gets bent over so that he doesn't flop over on his belly, and the hand goes under his face to support it, and this one is out here. So
now you have the space and time to get up and call for help, and his airway stays clear, the vomit doesn't go in his chest, he doesn't develop aspiration. Later on when he gets admitted, he won't develop pneumonia, and he won't suffer from lack of oxygen and thereby brain injury from lack of oxygen. And you can now call for your ambulance, your auto rickshaw, your van, your neighbor, your buddy to come over and get this guy to the hospital, or just wait for the ambulance. Now, Alex, come back to life. We want 3 volunteers, 3 first responders to come and demonstrate to us the same thing. It could be a foreign body, there could be vomit. You got to clear the airway, that's very important, so that they can breathe properly. Now, why is this ABCD? Simply because if the airway is not secure, you can't provide oxygen. If you can't provide oxygen, the circulation has got no value. And then you lose the disability. So that's why airway is first. So clear the airway, position the patient appropriately. Now if the patient is unconscious but breathing, this position. If the patient is not breathing at all, what will you do? What can you do? If the patient is not breathing at all. Resuscitation. But we will first check his pulse. So if his pulse is there, but he's not breathing adequately, it's very shalloh. you know it's not adequate. Or you got a pulse oximeter. Some of you must be having pulse oximeters after this pandemic. You'll check his oxygen at 60%. What are you going to do? Give him oxygen. Give him, support his breaths. How can you support his breaths? That is for his heart, no. You can do mouth to mouth, but now there's COVID, so that nobody will give mouth to mouth. You can get a mouthpiece as a first responder, and you can, that has a plastic, so you can use that. Or at your PHC or at your local, any one of you who's like a trained first responder can get an ambu bag. A lot of people will be having oxygen at home. The PHC will have oxygen. You can use an ambu to give rescue breaths. Dr. Vrinda will demonstrate.
The mask is placed over the bridge of the nose and covers the chin. If the patient is not a trauma patient, when you're not suspecting a cervical spine injury, the wire is there. Okay. So when you're not suspecting a cervical spine injury, you can extend the neck like this and then just pump in air. You see that chest is rising? Anyone's allergic to nuts here? Anyone has heard of anaphylaxis? Allergic to anything for that matter?
Yes.
Sorry? It's like a shock. Yes, it is like a shock. What happens is, and your entire system mounts an allergic response against it. Your blood pressure will drop, your airway can close down. It is a life-threatening situation. We cannot do anything once the airway is shut, except for this one thing. Adrenaline. Of course, there are other antihistaminics, there are steroids that will be given, but the drug of choice is, like the main drug in anaphylactic shock is adrenaline, and this is to be administered in a hospital by a healthcare professional. Which is why it is very important that you get to a hospital on time, get your ASV in a hospital that can handle this reaction, because you cannot test for this. This is the only treatment for snakebite. If you get anaphylaxis, treat anaphylaxis and then again get ASV. That is the main line of management. Anyone here has heard of EpiPens? Yeah, so exactly. That is something that people who have known allergies carry with them. If they have such a reaction, they take it then and there in the thigh, right? So that is a very serious medical emergency. So it's better not to take a risk. Even a PHC has the capability of administering ASV, but they transfer to a higher center mainly because of this reason.
I think Ben Hill has very beautifully explained to you all what are the relevant snakes in India. What snake is this? Spectacled cobra. This one? Common crate. Now, one snake similar to this, which Ben Hill also spoke about, is a wolf snake. So you have the white stripes, and these are usually paired, but very often in a juvenile, the adult, the front part of it may have single bands, so it may be confusing. So do look carefully and avoid contact anyways. This one? Very good. This one? Yes. This one? Yes. Anybody has doubts? Want to see it again? This one? Saw-scale viper. Okay. The juvenile Russell's viper babies will look similar to this. You might be confused at times. But both are anyways very toxic, so don't mess around. This one is a highly relevant species where I practice, and it's also relevant a little bit further down from here. It's the hump-nose pit viper. Anti-snake venom that we've just passed around and showed you does not work for this. It's not available, and it's highly toxic. We do lose patients to the envenomation by this snake. So if you see a hump-nose pit viper, if you're on a trek or moving around, please stay away from it. It's very beautiful, but it's highly toxic as well. Here you have the Malabar pit viper and the bamboo pit viper, which have been spoken about. So thank you all for listening. I'm going to request you all now for one last effort to come and join us to practice some CPR. And meanwhile, this will be on. You can save everybody's numbers if you want.